Let me
So
ask you this from as far as you can tell. So this news broke in terms of the SEC limiting the roster to what was it, 10, and then how much for track? 10 and 35.
35.
Yeah, 10 and 35. Is this kind of going to become a precedent for other conferences, or is this unique to just the SEC?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that because that's something that people were. I mean, I'm guessing you saw my post. I mean, it was crazy. I think like 600,000 people saw or something, which is a blessing, an absolute blessing. So I think hopefully the right thing gets done. But yeah, what people are commenting, what they don't seem to understand is that they're saying it's going to like disperse talent. But if you look at the past and like what's happened with other sports, like in the past, like even just a couple years ago, Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC. What happens? Like conferences or the Pac-12 basically gets decimated because all these schools are trying to join into like the bigger conferences, like Stanford and Cal. They joined the ACC. You got Oregon and Washington who are now in the Big Ten, and so everybody's kind of over the place. And I think it's going to be something similar, where if the SEC does has this plan, that I think that the other conferences will do it too. And that's something that I was trying to communicate is it's not just like the SEC is doing this and it's like, oh, sucks for the SEC guys. No, I think that it's actually like bad for the sport because it's going to probable. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but it's going to likely end up being the same way across the board.
Someone who commented on your post, Connor Burns, who's been on the podcast multiple times, and that guy's a total jokester, so I'm not sure how serious of a comment this is, but Connor commented on your post. He said, every single person has completely missed the point of this. The only reason men's rosters are smaller than women's rosters are because of Title IX. Otherwise, it'd be 1745 across the board. This has nothing to do with budget. What's your response to that?
Yeah, and I think that I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's what a lot of people are thinking. Um, and if you go in, I actually printed out. I read the timeline document to see if that was the case, and I'll give you a quick example, real quick. Like Ole Miss, for example, they have over 120 football players on their team right now. If for people who are listening and they don't know all the roster changes, football is actually going to 105. So football's going down. So it's not like a like because football's getting more players kind of thing because they're actually getting less here. Um, and it's all to do with proportionality. So like at a school like Alabama, for example, I think they're like almost 60% female and 40% male. You got to have roughly 60% female athletes compared to 40% male athletes, and that's across the entire board. And so I think that I mean, it could maybe be a Title IX like problem at some schools, but that's not the case at schools. And like even if it was a Title IX problem, a way that you could easily solve that would just be add another female sport. And but schools obviously aren't going to do that because they don't want to spend the money to add female sports. So I don't think that it is a Title IX issue. I can read you the legislation here, but I think that it's actually just a money issue.
We talked about how this could set a precedence in the NCAA with other leagues, conferences, but I'm curious to get your thought on if this doesn't really change other conferences and it's exclusive to the SEC. How much do you think it'll level the playing field specifically within running, or conversely, D2, D3 schools will start to get some of the crazy recruits?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that if it does trickle down, which I do think is very unlikely, to be completely honest. I mean, I think it's very unlikely, but if it does, I think yeah, there will be some more dispersion. I think that the bulk of the SEC programs will go to track based programs, like a lot of them are right now. Ole Miss, for example, is mostly just throws and distance, but you got like Auburn's a sprints program for the most part. You got Florida's a sprints program for the most part. I think you're going to see that because those guys, it's just a little bit easier to cross over events and thus score more points in track. And so, yes, I think that distance running will kind of be dispersed across conferences. And I mean, yeah, I would say that would probably happen.